All right, thanks everybody. Okay, so this talk is called Reimagining and Redeploying the Digital Ecosystem at RISD. I'm going to share what we've been up to for the past few years. And I have a few lessons learned for those of you who may be doing similar work at your institution. I'm deliberately going to keep this like a little bit short so that we have a few minutes of discussion afterward, because I really like hearing about how folks are managing digital at other institutions. Okay, so hello, my name is Brian Clark. I am the Senior Director of Digital Experience at Rhode Island School of Design, which is right here in Providence. I lead the strategy and operations for all of our major websites in our Drupal Acquia ecosystem. I get asked a lot about our team structure. My team is called Digital Experience. We are 4 full-time employees, and we have a team of wonderful designers and developers at Media Current who we work with every day. Our internal team, Jesse, and Rob are here. Say hello. An interesting thing about our group is that we report into both marketing and communications as well as IT. This allows us to approach our work from a foundation of marketing and communications, as well as technology and systems. The reason I'm doing this talk is because our team is now in a much better place, thanks to my amazing team and our agency partners, as well as some incredibly supportive stakeholders within RISD. Last year, we launched our new digital experience platform, which runs on Drupal and Acquia Site Factory, and has a component-based design system, a new component-based design system that is fully aligned with RISD's newish brand identity. I say newish because it's a couple of years old. We've now used this to completely relaunch our main risd.edu site, as well as a big student-specific destination that aggregates dozens of smaller student service websites. And we're now working on a new slate of sites, all in a coordinated way. But this is not where we started a few years back. At that point, we had close to 100 websites, all promoting part of the college. Now, I know 100 is not necessarily a huge number for a college, but we don't offer web space to individual faculty members or graduate students or departments. All of these were really core informational sites that were aimed at either prospective students or the campus community or parents or donors or something out external to the college. And they were on many different content management systems, everything from WordPress to Drupal, Squarespace, Wix, Cargo, and all the others. This was the list of some of the bigger ones. Having a lot of websites is not necessarily a problem, but in our case, all of them looked and sounded wildly different, and the overall UX was a mess, and most of them presented significant security and compliance risks. We had no backup or business continuity plans for most websites. There were no plans for repairing breached or aging code. There was no common understanding of WCAG accessibility standards, and then this exposed us to ADA lawsuits. So back in 2019, what became known as our ecosystem initiative started with a presentation that I created, and together with our CMO at that time, I delivered to the president and the upper administration. And we talked about how RISD's websites attract over 1 million visitors every year, but our digital campus did not reflect RISD's standards of quality. Expectations for RISD are, and they should be, very high. We proposed a digital publishing system for the future that would bring together people, processes, infrastructure, governance, content, and domains toward a common purpose and with sustainable governance. And once that was proposed, I honestly didn't stop talking about it for well over a year. While we worked on a plan for funding, I took the presentation to every department and every area of the college which had a website and therefore had skin in the game. I shared our strategy for getting the campus organized on a common set of tools and a common set of processes, and creating a coherent set and the goal was to create a coherent sense of digital place and committing to accessibility. And this is 100% what guides our work to this very day. So that lesson number 1 was, if you are doing this work, you are in the people business. Most of our sites had someone behind it who cared. These folks had goals and they had things to communicate. Some of them were afraid that they would lose the control that they had had over their content, and we needed to show them how our platform would create value, whether that's publishing agility, brand standardization, accessibility, or saving departments money. They were our future collaborators, and we wanted them to feel that we'd spent the time to hear and synthesize their concerns so that when we were coming back to them with something that was a response, and when it was time to ask them to participate in a new CMS system, we already had them on our team. In a fortunate bit of timing, while we were selling our vision, RISD was in a strategic planning phase, and this helped us secure funding. And we even got the project written into the strategic plan. And it was written to, quote, transform RISD's websites and other digital functions into a strategically consistent, intentional, and audience-focused ecosystem. This allowed us to do a very exhaustive study of all the content that was being published and to consider new organizing principles. So we eventually landed on a user-focused architecture that's still guiding our approach. Everything took a bit of a pause during the height of the pandemic, but by 2022, my colleagues in marketing and communications were working on a new brand identity framework for RISD. This new RISD identity launched in 2022. And at the same time, my team was working with MediaCurrent to design and build a common set of modular Drupal components that could be combined to deliver all types of content. So we slowed this effort down a little bit to let the brand work catch up so that we could then align the visual presentation of the components with the new brand system. And that worked out pretty well. I mean, this is really where the UX design came together with RISD's identity. And we refer to this as our digital product system. And so this became kind of the center of everything for us. But what we definitely learned was how we came initially to what was going to be in the first set of components was by doing a large-scale audit of all of the sites that existed, all 100 or so that were on that list. And what we learned was that before you design it, audit your content, and then go back and audit it again. Because we spent months and months developing our system, and we still found that we missed some basic content scenarios. Figma makes it really easy to make comps of different page types, and I recommend if you're doing this work, just make as many comps as you can. I wish we could have gone back and comped every potential scenario on the website. It definitely would have helped us stress test each of the components individually, but also how they come together in groups. Ultimately, we got things figured out, and using the components and tools for the product system, we were able to relatively quickly develop the new RISD.edu site, and this launched in early 2023. We've been able to quickly and collaboratively build smaller presences like this expanded education site, and all the while we've been training the teams on campus to update and manage these sites on their own. These are screens from our Student Hub. This connects students to resources, offices, and services. Many of the older siloed departmental websites have been migrated into Drupal as subsites within this Student Hub destination. Last year, we launched a new searchable courses browser, which integrates course data from Workday Student. And here are a few other recent sites which have come up in just the last few months. One of the ways that we're able to keep our momentum up is we work in sprints with MediaCurrent. And so you can see by the tagging system within Jira here, the sprints, the stuff that goes into our individual sprints is a mix of new features. Right now we're migrating to Storybook, so you see there's a tag for Storybook component, spacing and visual enhancements, editorial improvements, technical enablers. So it's always tries to be a good mix of different types of things which will both benefit new experiences as well as the platform as a whole. And that's really the third lesson, was running a disciplined operation. We've been releasing things consistently and methodically, and I think we've been able to do this by developing a rigorous product management approach. We see all of our sites as products of the institution, and so to that end, we are constantly evaluating how well they're doing, how easy it is for folks to be able to manage the content of them, And all of this goes into what we consider for those sprints. Within the sprints, we push code every 2 weeks. We're always fixing something. We're always updating something. And we found that with a regular development cadence, we're really able to get control over bugs, catch up on our backlog, optimize our components, and consistently add new features. We're also amazed at how adaptable we've been able to become to whatever comes our way. This is how we will grow and evolve the ecosystem over time without ever having to start over with any massive redesign efforts. And that's where we are. Like I said, we continue to methodically work through the sites that remain outside the platform. And the goal, our myth, is always a system of developing and cultivating a system of well-planned, institutionally aligned sites. As we bring these sites over, we work to refine or consolidate the content, and we're strengthening its value for its intended audiences. Meanwhile, my team is growing a network of Drupal users across campus, and this has created a community around our website ecosystem. So I'll leave this slide here. This is our kind of ROI slide that I like to bring out in terms of just helping people understand the cohesive platform and what how that's kind of worked for us as an institution, and how that's laddered up to there were other aspects of our strategic plan that were about what was called enabling systems. So it was digital transformation efforts on the college's behalf. So this is how we kind of align our efforts to that. But I'm curious if anyone has questions. I know a lot of groups are also doing similar work, some at very bigger scales. But yeah, anyway, so. Yeah, go ahead.
What's been the biggest challenge in living your myth and trying to get everyone on board?
Sure. The question is, what's been the biggest challenge? I think the first biggest challenge was buy-in. And I don't want to undersell it. I mean, I really did spend a year. I went to every department. I took, some of these slides go back to some of that original, those original decks. And it was really getting folks who had been, not all of the sites. There were a lot of sites, and you saw on that slide, they all looked very different, and that wasn't really helpful to us as one institution or from a brand perspective. I think a lot of times folks outside the institution didn't know if something was official or not, based on how it kind of presented. But that doesn't mean that all those sites were bad, or that the people who were working on those sites weren't invested in their success. And so I think what we had to do was, what we had to really do was make sure that they understood the value of being part of a larger system, and how if we all worked towards the same ends and that benefited the college, it benefits us all. That was the first part. I think probably the second part now is just doing the work. We're probably 30 or 40% through all the sites. We do a very hands-on approach in terms of migration. My team meets with the stakeholders. We do an information architecture review. We look at the goals of the site, talk about their audiences before we even try to start to migrate stuff over into the new component system. And so, that takes effort, that takes care, it takes communication. All of that, I think, is something that we consider critically important, and that is how we kind of live the myth. Yes?
You mentioned you're training some of the personnel on how to update their site.
Yep.
Are they actually responsible for the actual module upgrades, the composer updates, and that kind of thing?
No, it's completely content only. We're on Layout Builder. I neglected to say that earlier. So the learning curve is, what we teach is really about understanding what the content components are within the system, and then teaching them how to use it in Layout Builder. But even then, we have guardrails right now. So we instituted a permission system. And so, there are folks at different levels who have different levels of permissions, but we generally eyeball everything that's kind of getting published right now. There'll come a point when this isn't feasible. And I'm happy to get to that point. But for now, it helps us understand both. I think the most important thing that it helps us understand is also where the system is failing a little bit. Because a lot of times you'll see folks do, like recently, someone tried to put a video into a block that was not made for video. It looked terrible, but it was, we coach them in a different direction, but it definitely gives you a moment to think like, well, what might need to happen that isn't happening? And so that goes into some of the ideation process for upcoming sprints.
Thanks.
Sure. Yes. It is, yeah. Jesse, and Rob have a curriculum that they roll out to. What do you work in groups of like 8 or 9 maybe?
About that, and then Jeff, you also do one-on-one tutorials.
That's right.
As needed, but yeah, as we're migrating, we'll have little cohorts that come together.
And I'm hoping that once we're done with our storybook migration, we can also use that as kind of a visual style guide that can help people, understand that we're building documentation, but what ultimately we're working towards is like a visual style guide that can help people understand the components when they're not, in the middle of trying to, or maybe while they're trying to actually do something. Does that answer the question? Thank you. Hi.
Hi. So when you are bringing a website over, you're using the layout builder to kind of go from top to bottom and input all the content?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, we actually don't have a lot of page templates. We have, by design, sort of a minimal number of page templates. And then we just use Layout Builder to, kind of define what the page styles are. And then, there's a certain degree of flexibility in terms of that. So we usually guide. We tend to, when we're working with a group to migrate, say, an existing site, we tend to sort of show them kind of the decision making as we're bringing stuff over and get them used to the idea of how the blocks go and the types of combinations of components or blocks that make for good looking pages and easily readable and understandable pages, and then allow them to kind of go off and start to do it on their own. Hey, Dan.
So back at the beginning, how did the leadership support for this come about? And then, was there a mandator, so to speak, or something like that? And then, as you went on, how was the investment in this rationalized?
Yeah. The question was how, in terms of administrative buy-in, how did that kind of come about early on, and how has it continued to evolve? Is that?
And how the spending on the project rationalized?
I understand. Okay. Yeah, how is spending on that? So we were fortunate in that we made the pitch not knowing, honestly, at first what it was going to cost or what we were really truly going to need. We sort of made the pitch based on like, you've got a team that is trying to manage. I mean, we were in charge. We weren't as big. For one, it was myself and one other person, and we were managing the core RISD.edu it wasn't Drupal, but in the previous content management system. And then we had all these other sites, and what would happen was, faculty would hire a graduate student to build the site. The good thing about RISD, the good and the bad thing, is there's no shortage of creativity or entrepreneurialism, so these sites could get easily made. But then the problem was these students would graduate, or adjunct faculty would leave the college, and these sites would start to go adrift, and then maybe they'd break or they'd need to be updated and they didn't know how. They'd call us. And so we got to the point where we were chasing these sites all over creation, and we were frustrated. So it partly came out of that, but it also partly came out of a marketing sense of like, this is not good. This is not a good look for the college. I remembered an administrative person in one of the departments being like, here's what I have to send to prospective students just to get them acclimated to, coming into the school. And it was like 6 or 7 different subdomains that they needed to kind of bounce from one to the other just to like find all the information that they needed. It was crazy. So we started to make the pitch based on that. Then a couple of things happened. All the lawsuits around accessibility started to happen. And we were already talking about accessibility, but that I think gave us some leverage because we were able to say, having control over the entirety is what's going to keep us from, getting sued off of one random site. And so that was one. The second thing was we already happened to be in a strategic planning moment, and they were looking at bringing in like a new ERP system and other campus systems. And so some of the pitch was, content management an experience platform should be seen as something equivalently, important. And so we made that argument. And then a donation came in for infrastructure, a very decent donation. And the president, so we were in the middle of having these conversations with leadership, and the president asked if that donation could be used for digital infrastructure. And that was okay with the donor. And so that was applied to us. And honestly, that gave us the funding that we needed for like the first 3 years. So that helped bring about all of the initial audits that we did, all of the UX work, all the design system creation, all of the initial setup of Site Factory. So all of that. Now what we do is we're running more of it out of our individual departmental budgets. And the way we look at it is, if we're migrating a site in and you're able to bring over your content and use all of the components that already exist, then the cost is essentially free. But if it's our time, but it's dollar-wise, it's free. But if if it comes about that we need to build a new component or there's some new feature, data integration or something that will require additional development, then it's up to the individual department to help fund that. And so that's how we kind of keep the money going. And we build everything such that when we build something once, we deploy it for the entirety of the platform. So ideally we can get, a lot of repeat usage out of certain types of new components and that kind of thing. Does that answer?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Sarah.
Hi. So I have a question. I guess obviously my hand was raised. I might have missed this, but are you an in-house development team or?
No, we work with, so in-house is only like product management and content development.
Okay.
And we work with Media Current, which is an agency. And so right now they are doing we work with a product designer there who helps us kind of iterate on the system. And then our whole development team is at that agency.
Thank you.
Sure. Carol?
Yeah, I'm curious because you're using Site Factory the same as we are, whether you've taken advantage of governance of allowing some of your users to have platform-wide Site Factory user IDs, not just individual Drupal user IDs on individual sites.
Yes. So the question was, are we allowing our users, our site builders, to have rights and abilities within Site Factory to impact? Not yet, is essentially the answer. Right now, it's the permissions are really at the individual site level. Essentially, the management of Site Factory is myself and our folks at the agency.
Not yet, but so what are the reasons that you foresee maybe using it in the future?
I could see as right now, that's even speculative. We don't have that many sites yet. We're up to like 4 or 5, and we're going to be, by the end of the year, we'll be at 5. By the end of next year, I'm hoping we'll be at 10, and then 20 or 30 by year 3. Once we get into that type of situation, there will be clusters of sites that have common stakeholders, and there are some folks in other areas of the college who are, it's not exactly equivalent roles, but are more kind of web manager roles. And I could foresee a situation where there might be some administrative oversight over like certain clusters of sites, groupings of sites. But it wouldn't be until we get more migrated in. Hi, yeah, I can't see your name, I'm sorry. Yeah, at any given time, we have 2 that are dedicated to the business, and then I don't believe fully full-time, but largely dedicated to our business. And then I know through just seeing how the tickets, there are folks, I think, I'm not sure where their offshore office is, but I know there are folks that they get supplemental help. So at any given time, there's probably 4 or 5 developers working on it, but there's 2 who are really kind of focused on our business, and then others, I think, just swing in and out. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.